And good morning. My initial and there, it's me talking to my phone, trying to make that little microphone bar light up to make sure that my microphone is, of course, working. Now it is working, or you wouldn't be hearing this. Otherwise, you're just looking at a static screen, going, "When's the action going to kick in?" The action's going to kick in shortly. I'm going to try and race through this video. Apologies, I'm just getting comfortable, getting ready, getting my tools up. All right, so what are we doing? This is the super quick. I say super quick, less than 30 minutes. I can feed the cat shortly. All right, this is how to tune a game that hey, it might not need these tunings. This is Starfield 201. Okay, so Starfield 101 is assuming you've got the game and assuming you've got standard niggles. Standard gaming niggles, all the sorts of things that you can go and find one of those lists on the net that says, here's how you fix your game. And I noticed in the last day or so when I've been looking at those lists that the actual fix for a few Microsoft titles are not in anybody's lists. And so that being the case, I thought, I better put up some of these put up some of the solutions that might actually work. Now, look, let me preface this. Okay, I'm not trying to create smoke where there isn't any fire here. I don't want a clickbait video. I really hope the only people finding this video are people who have genuine need for it. That these might be 3 or 4 solutions that no other guide will have, because these are very unique issues with software. I'd like to say that I'm probably being a little bit chicken little here. The sky is falling, but typical to Microsoft software releases, they have some issues that other software just doesn't have. If that's the case, some of these solutions might work for you. I've experienced these as issues on other titles, which are generally the works of property by several studios coming together, that the PC version had certain aspects of jank in it that the console version didn't have, with the attitude, with all the users in the forums just saying, oh, look, I'm just going to buy a console, it just works on console. The fact that Starfield is a play anywhere title, meaning that you buy the software on one platform, you get it on the other, that's generally the most baked with little niggles, accidentally type software that I've ever come across. So I've got a feeling that this software is going to be used to move a lot of people into the Xbox console ecosystem, and therefore expect all the things with Xbox Live software login issues. If the Forza game was anything to go by, when the mods started moderating the Forza forums, they actually removed a lot of the solutions for how to rejiggle the Xbox software, because it kept getting a little bit corrupt on PC, and then it wouldn't essentially log you in to your gamer's account, even though you'd be logged into Windows fine, even though everything else would be working fine. It would just be that your Microsoft games, just your Microsoft games, because they work off essentially the Microsoft Store, and they've got their own copy protection, arguably, that goes through this Xbox Live front end. But that Xbox Live front end can trip up. In fact, someone who in the last 2 weeks has put up a couple of videos having used Windows Game Bar. The first time I used Windows Game Bar, that recording software it was like it just stuck. It was permanently a 10% less frame rate across all my games. When I tracked through the task manager what might be going on, what I could see in the background was the amount of data that was being written to my disk under the resource manager actually indicated that I was recording video footage. So with a lot of effort was I able to actually physically remove Game Bar from my PC, which was actually what I then had to do. Now, I don't think that luxury is anyone using Microsoft software. I don't think you've got the solutions I needed in order to actually make Game Bar defunct essentially required pulling out all my Xbox Live login software, which is probably required for Microsoft gaming. So if that's the case, probably won't have that luxury with Starfield, but just be mindful that there's probably a few things that can cause less than perfect operation of this software. There's probably not any one solution. My my understanding of the way Microsoft does these accidents is that as long as you don't affect everybody, not enough people complain at any one given time, and you get away with it. So generally, it'll be like they did with Forza. It was the drivers, where they forced us back to a 6-month-older driver package, which introduced an 8 to 10-minute load time at the start when starting the game. And it was the only time that Microsoft actually got to the forums and got in communication with us all and just said, "Oh, look, we've contacted AMD. Don't you guys do that?" And then 6 weeks later, I was watching accounts getting banned because they were attempting to reverse engineer the latest drivers with an older number to indicate to the computer that, oh, no, don't replace the new drivers with the old cruddy drivers that add a 10-minute load time. Right. So anyway, I don't want. This isn't a whinge video. It really isn't. I've had a couple of coffees this morning. I didn't really want to do this video. I don't think this video should have any need to exist. But look, there was quite a few peculiarities with Forza, in particular, that I've never seen in any other game, and they were definitely baked into the game. So there's a pretty good chance that other people out there, there's a chance that a person might be suffering. So look, if you go to your control panel. You can go to the Win key and R. Win key and R will bring up a run box. You can type in the word control. That will bring up your control panel. If you find system, so for me, I always go, this is the old school one. I think you might actually, I think by default it isn't in this. You can go at the top and go show old school style. I don't know. Anyway. On system, if you right click and open it, you can actually get to the old school control panel. You can go advanced system settings. You can also go to your standard Windows cog. That'll bring up a control panel screen. From here you can go into system. And on the system screen down the bottom, you'll be able to get down to, I think it's an about. Off the about screen, and the right hand side of the screen you'll see advanced system settings. All right, now please excuse me, I'm sitting a fair way back from my computer, so I'm just going to put a magnifier up. That might be a bit too big. I don't want to blow everybody's brains out at home. Usually I'm a 175 kind of guy. Even 150 might get us by today. 175, there we go. You don't have to zoom in so much. Look, anybody leave notes in the, leave comments in the threads there if you prefer 150% when I'm doing these sorts of videos. That's okay. I don't expect anyone to subscribe or give feedback, but look, I am testing a different Bluetooth mic. I'm doing what I can to improve and whatnot. So look, what have we got? I've gone, as I was saying, you go to your control panel. Look, I personally, whenever I've got a control panel up, so Win key R, type in control. That'll bring you to, I like the classic control panel. Once that's up, I actually just go right click and pin, and that way I've always got access to it as a button if ever I need the control panel. Here it is. Of course, a lot of these things, if you click on system now, the way we used to, it goes to the new Windows control panels, which are a lot less useful. So again, just right click and open, right click being the mouse button on the other side, but if you're gaming, you know where your right mouse button is. And then you just go right click open, and that'll get you to system properties. Now in system properties, there is a few things here we can do, but we're just going to go over to the advanced tab, and we're going to come in under performance. And again, we've got some tabs across the top. We've got visual effects. You can actually, just as an aside and maintenance on your computer, there's a few in here that you can generally tick. Things like slide open combo boxes, some aspects of animating screen effects can actually just get in the way as a user with you doing things. It just puts a few frames of delay before you can continue doing your tweaking and stuff. So I just suggest maybe tweak your visual effects to what suits you. I actually turn a couple off, irrelevant of the performance capability of my machine. I just find it improves Windows usage. Anyway, one of the tricks we're doing is locking virtual memory to a minimum and maximum size that's the same, and actually quite a large amount of it. Now, if you're like me, we've probably all moved to the world of solid-state drives or faster NVMe drives, arguably same type of tech. But when we do that, we didn't have a need anymore for for virtual memory. But just come into the screen, just find where your virtual memory is. It'll be here set. It'll be system managed by default. If you come in, you click on the drive where it is. Generally, it'll be your C drive. And then you've got the option here. It'll be set to system managed. You can go no paging file and set if you like. And many people have been doing that of late. But really what we want to do is go custom size. What we want to do is set a minimum and a maximum. I'd recommend somewhere between 10, possibly up to 20 gigabytes of virtual RAM, and just go set. And then that should there set that. You will actually need to reboot your machine in order for that change to take effect. But once you come out of there, look, that there has to do with when we run textures that are larger than what our video RAM is capable of running, and Microsoft has a way of bottling down our CPU, where it'll affect the maximum frame rate of the game. So if they fill up your video RAM, then your frame rate will bomb. Now, the best way to fill up your video RAM is to use more VRAM than you need. The best way to do that, they've got this double-edged sword where the size of the texture, the size of the install on PC is massive. It looks like they've just gone out of their way to create a texture file size. It's just absolutely huge. By all means, knock your textures down to medium, a couple of steps down. Those top tier couple of textures aren't about more resolution. They've got to be about extra color depth. But if your video card is running out of VRAM and it's making it so that, and knowing Microsoft, they could easily be encrypted. Why anybody would encrypt one large texture file, I don't know. Oh, we do know it's to bog down the CPU. So if your CPU is bogged down, you'll know about it. Your frame rate, your minimum frame or your maximum frame rate can easily be affected. So they did it on Forza Horizon that nobody could really get 60 frames a second. A couple of ways in which they did that was literally encrypting your texture file, so you had to decrypt on the fly, which just bogs down your CPU. And that CPU being loaded. So I'll just load a game so that we've got an ability to see something loaded. Space's Choice is what I like to play with at the moment. Outer Worlds, being another Microsoft title, this game also has a few niggles that are specific to it. But you know, not maybe so badly. Who knows? This notion of a giant encrypted texture file managed to get Forza to have frame rate lows of about 47 frames a second in key areas of the game. But what actually happened is if you set your virtual memory to be some huge amount, once it actually finished doing a decryption of the entire, because DirectX 12 can save all graphics as one large file. Once it actually finished decrypting that file, the CPU overhead needed to perform decryption just dropped right off, and the minimum frame rate just went good. Now, you did have to play the game for about a solid hour driving around, and once you'd sort of opened up all the in-game graphics, that burden just went away. So that was really fantastic. Now, why have I brought this up? Okay, so if you're playing your game, right, not your title screen of your game, but you're playing your game, and you're seeing one core is absolutely fully loaded, that core, if it is responsible for your game rate's minimum frame delivery, it might be holding you back. Now, it's pretty typical. You can see it. Generally, most software will happily use 4 cores, maybe up to 6 cores. Consoles have sort of had 7 or 8 cores for a while. Usually one is disabled to increase yield, one is given to the operating system. Up to 6 cores are available for gameplay. So it's pretty normal for modern software to make use of up to 6 cores. When you're gaming, if you come in here and you can just Alt-Tab out to your task manager. And to get your task manager up, Control-Alt-Escape will get you straight there. Control-Alt-Delete used to be our method, the 3-finger salute for many decades, but now that just brings you up to like a lock screen, from where you can get to the task manager. Anyway, once you get to your task manager, you click over to Performance, and you'll see here what looks like a big old core, and you want to change that to logical processors. So instead of just seeing all your cores averaged as one giant bar, which doesn't tell us what we need to know, we break that down into individual cores, and that way we can see if any one core is fully loaded. Now, one of the tricks, so look, if I didn't finish explaining about the encrypted textures, look, I shouldn't need to, nobody needs, look, I believe in educate a person to fish, but given it's an education that should never be relevant, let's just pretend it's not a thing. let's just hope that that hasn't been done. Anyway, look, what you do is you come find your game, right? So come find your game, and we're going to come down here, and because I haven't got my zoom on, my apologies, we're going to go to details, right? Now that will bring over where it is. Now I believe holding down the control key, if any of these screens you're on Chris over at Windows Intelligence gave this one just this week in the email. So Windows Intelligence looks like a spin-off for anyone who's subscribed to Thurrett. There seems to be that new email coming out. If you read them, they're kind of informative. Some of them require to link off to get the videos for information. But the hold down the control key to stop stuff shuffling around on the screen was the recent one. I thought it was pretty good. Anyway, just reminding us it has shortcut keys. Anyway, if you find your game running, it'll be pretty straightforward on this screen on your processes tab. It's going to be lit up saying very high. It's going to be flashing at you going, warning, warning, urgent. We're using your CPU, we're using your memory. You could probably click on any of these fields. It'll just come right up to the top. Okay, it'll be your most used application. Over that, you just go right click, and we just go to details. Now what that does is it actually finds it for us over on the details tab. Right? It saves us scrolling up and down. There's actually, you'll find a lot of stuff that can be on this screen. Right? So what we want to do is we want to come down here. We've got a couple of options. We've got set affinity and set priority. Okay, now set affinity. That's a good one. That one there allows you to choose what cores are being used to run your game. So if we come in here and we see that one core is fully loaded, and it's like your first core, you might find that your mouse is working on that. You might find your antivirus in the back end of your operating system is running on that core, right? What we might do is we might stop the game accessing that one core. If you've got tons of cores and cores to burn, and your game is loading fully onto one core, what we're going to do is we're going to turn that core off so that the game does not try to work on that core anymore. By forcing it to load onto other cores, we might find that when that loaded core is running, it won't be running flat out, right? The difference of the mouse.exe and the difference of your antivirus and all these other things just being on it, right? It might not happen. Now, we can all argue Windows theory. We can say this stuff shouldn't be happening. The reality is it might be happening, right? So again, if your first core or one of your cores is fully loaded and they start with core 0 and they work their way up. So if I've got 12, I'll have 0 to 11 as the IDs of my cores. Anyway, if we just found that core 0 here was fully loaded, what we would do is you can come over to processes. Remember what I said, you can click on, we know it's going to be fully loading down your machine. So if you click on either CPU or memory, one of these things will be highly used. You bring the software that you're using right up to the top. You can right click on it. You can go to my apologies, I'm sitting very, very many meters back. So you should be here. Open file location is not what we're after. That'll find us the software on the computer. Go to details. Right. So here we are. I've got my software. If I just move my mouse cursor over it and hit right click, I can go set affinity. Right. So remember what I was just saying here about your first core will be listed as 0, and then you work your way up to your final core. Now all you're going to do is just try and figure out what core might have been loaded in the other one. Generally, we're going to find that first core will be at the front there, and you can just untick that if you wanted, right? So it won't be using all of them. It won't be using that one. Right? Then you just go OK, and it will no longer use that core when rendering your game. Now, anyone out there is scared of what we're doing here, it's quite safe to do it. Like I'm going to hit OK, right? I'm actually going to close that software down now. Yeah, it's probably not the nice way to close it down. What we might do is just jump over to it. Actually, I'll just minimize that for a second. And, oh, okay, look, if I was to come back to it just briefly, right? So what we would find here, and so in this case, we can see it's kind of running on the second one. So just to make a demonstration of it, what we might do is we might just go to details. You will have to do this each time. So look, only if it makes a difference for you, by all means do this one. But if you're tweaking for 60 frames a second because the game just keeps dropping just below it and these sorts of tricks are affecting you, you're probably an advanced user. You probably care about this sort of stuff. And until this stuff gets sorted out, these solutions, they're not so bad to play. I mean, let's face it, when we're running the game, we're running it for large amounts of time. It is all good. Anyway, so now I can come over here. Sorry, I'll minimize this off. Okay, so, oh, my bad. So look, if I was to try and demonstrate that, I wasn't planning on demoing this stuff while running. Right, so we can see that the moment I dropped it from running on that core, bada bing, right? Now it's still doing that math, right? It's just moved it over to another core. So you'll see that the moment it dropped that, you'll probably find that the exact same spot, oh, look, that one there, that's gone up.
That one there's gone up. So now and that one there's gone up. So now it's forced distributing 3 or 4 little aspects of the software that was running on this core. It's now actually throwing them to different cores, right? So that there might just, if your frame rate was being held back by your CPU core, one of your cores being loaded to max, that might get you out of trouble. Alrighty. So coming back over to services, you see how horrible it would be if you'd lost it, right? So don't ever be afraid to come over here, go right click, go take me to it, and then you can come down here. Now that one there was set affinity. Now that one there was set affinity. That says which cores you're willing to run that software on, right? So by default it is set to all. If you've got a lot of cores, it doesn't really hurt to turn a couple of them off, or to turn one of them off, certainly. Anyway, that there is the next one we're going to do is set priority. Now, as counterintuitive as this is, real time, software doesn't like you setting real time, although some software benefits from real time. What I've found with Forza Horizon, this is counterintuitive to the way it should be. Normally, you'd run your software at normal. To increase it to above normal or high just means it's like first cab off the rank, right? The operating system is going to try to give priority to your software above all else when it's doing things as a machine. But one of the things about Forza, in order to take out the judder, right? And as a race game, you felt it. If you're driving 200 kilometers an hour down the road, a single frame hitch made a difference. So one of the big ones with Forza was dropping your priority here to low. And that's why I do this video today. Right? It's a little bit back to front. So you just come in here, you set that to low, blink, that'll warn you. You go, yeah. And again, it's only on a per usage basis. All right. Then once you've done that, you can just come into your game. Well, probably have to minimize your task manager, I should say. And you can continue from there. Yeah. Now, what are some other tricks? Okay. Look, my apologies here. I do have a couple other things just on a notepad. I'll just have a look if I've missed any of them. Look, if you're having a hard time hitting 60, I'm going to just assume that you're a pretty savvy computer user and that you actually know what you're doing, and that you've gone looking for guides on how to tune. Now I've said do not use the Xbox game bar. Once I turned that DVR on, I lost 10% permanently of frame rate across everything. I've talked about setting the virtual memory. Yes, I agree, even if you don't need to use it, even if you've got 64 gig of RAM, just like I did, or tons more memory than the game needs, it's just a thing. Set your virtual memory. Lock off the minimum and the maximum. We've gone set your priority. So that's, set your affinity. So we can turn off cores as need be. We can set the priority to low, which seems a bit weird. I found with Forza actually some weird stuff in testing. If I manually set the resolution to like 19, you know how we run 1920 by 1080. If I ran like 1921 by 1080, all of a sudden the frame rate improved. If I ran non-standard resolutions, it was like there was something in the code saying, we recognize that you're doing something for standard resolution, we're going to hurt you. And on that notion, it was the same with anti-aliasing. 8 times anti-aliasing ran the game a lot smoother than 2 times anti-aliasing. So don't be afraid to experiment. Forza was a little bit interesting that when you turn the game on, any overclocking you had on your computer would actually stop that game from running. It would be optimizing for your PC was one of the states when the game fired up. So I would overclock my PC. I've been stably overclocking since the original Celeron 300A back in the 90s. I've always been very good at overclocking. When I was overclocking my rig, I had a machine that I could push up to 5 gigahertz. It was generally rated about 4 gigahertz. But I found with Forza, even a 4.2 gigahertz or a very, very slight overclock for me would crash it out. And I mean, I could pass the hard overclocks on my machine would pass Intel burn test and the worst of the worst testing suites that would trip up certain math functions, or parts of the die would get too hot. And with Forza, the most mild overclock, the most stable overclock that I couldn't trip up using any other process on the planet, and Forza would just trip up when the game would be firing up. Now, once the game was fired up, if I manually applied my overclock, the game could run a week, like literally 5 days flat out, 24/7, and not have an issue.
So there might be some software procedure on testing of the game startup that will actually get a bit janky if your overclocking is running. So just be mindful. If you've got software methods to turn your overclocking on and off, you might need to turn it off when you're starting the game. It might run fine then once the game is started. Look, I do say the latest display drivers. I know that's a funny one. We all go, yeah, look, I'm running the latest display drivers. Again, Forza, Microsoft rolled us back to video drivers that were many, many months out of date. In fact, they'd never actually existed because old drivers never caused the 8-9 minute load time that the Microsoft inserted forced drivers did. So just make sure your video drivers aren't coming from Microsoft, but that may or may not get you out of trouble. Look, check your power plan. If you're on a laptop, standard features though, sometimes this is on PC, set your power plan to high. This stuff starts to get into the standard. Look, this is how you make other games work. Look, if you're on a laptop, make sure you've got 2 channels of RAM in there. That is, your RAM is in dual channel mode. So just install CPU Z or some freeware. You don't even have to install that. You can just run that on the fly. That'll just tell you if you're using 1 stick of RAM or 2. You want your laptop to be running in dual channel RAM, and it can access both sticks of RAM at the same time. One of those sticks of RAM will be doubling as video RAM. So if you've got all your bandwidth going to 1 stick of RAM, you're probably going to be limiting your frame rate very, very substantially for any gaming on your laptop. So a lot of manufacturers only give you 1 stick of RAM. If you are trying to do gaming on a laptop, at some level you're probably using, especially if you're using the video chip built into your, if it's an APU type design, if you're using the Intel video chip sometimes, and then you've actually got a dedicated video gaming chip for the rest of the time. When you're on your Intel video chip, that system memory will be vital because it will be your video card RAM. So just make sure that you're running 2 sticks of RAM. It's not a case of you need more RAM. It's just a case of you need the parallelity, the ability to access both those sticks of RAM in parallel. Look, I did mention about that Xbox Live login stuff. Apologies, I haven't given any guides here for how to forcibly reinstall it or forcibly restart it, but that was the solution to so many niggles with getting other Xbox Live games, or Forza certainly up and running. Distributed communications, right, shouldn't be an issue. I must admit, every time that the Outer Worlds has dropped to desktop, it has been a nightmare. I do see DCOM calls that are failing across the system. I'm just like other people on the net know that distributed communication should not in any way affect your gaming whatsoever if it is some kind of more substantial going on. But I have seen it. It is possibly across a range of titles. It can be an issue, DCOM. Rebuild your shaders. Okay, you can forcibly rebuild your shaders. That's a good one. Okay, Alt F4 no longer works. All right, so look, I'm doing a really poor job here. I've had a few too many coffees this morning, I think it's fair to say. Alrighty, so you can neaten. What was the old one where we'd neaten up our drives? Got to delete under your drive care. You can look after your files. Look, I went the old method. No. Right click, open. Alrighty. Look, now I'm a little bit lost. If you clean up your drive files, which I've not. Look, I can get there via the old one. I don't like going via the old one. I feel like I've got to black out certain aspects of this information. Dear. So what have we got under system? Yep, you can come down to storage. Under storage, you can go. Maybe it's configure storage since it shouldn't be. I think it's under manage storage spaces. This looks like we're going down the right path. No, of course it isn't. But there is a Windows one. Alrighty. Couldn't be under optimized drives. Now, I'd like to think change when new content is saved would be the old steps for changing the default location for where Windows Live games are, but they want me to go to a web page now for something that's on my computer. Oh, so my bad. Yeah, come here under Windows C. It is under temporary files. Dear. And then you'll have here under your DirectX shader cache. Yep, and you can get rid of that. Or you actually get rid of
you can untick everything else and just leave that ticked, and that just means that's the one I think we want to redo. Alrighty, and then go apply. Anyway, my bad. I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here. I just, that decom throws me. I don't think it should be that. Rebuilding shaders. Work for Outer Worlds was a massive, fixed all my drops of desktop on that one. It was a little bit disappointing that one was happening. Turn off conflicting startup software. Look, that's a straightforward one. Check eCPU usage, as I was saying. If one core is running flat out, we're going to do what we're doing. Look, the sound rate, you can change. This one shouldn't really matter, but it did matter on Skyrim. If you come into sound, and if you find your particular sound card, my roll 3 at once isn't working. My sound card is not there. Okay, and anyway, you should be able to come into any given sound device that's set up, and under properties, change the sound sampling rate. Right, and it's under advanced. So for Skyrim on this screen, if that was set to 24-bit 96 kilohertz, it didn't work. It was one of the only games I'd ever come across where it had to be set back to like 16-bit 48 kilohertz. And then just go OK and come out of that. With Skyrim, that was an accident, I believe. And that's the problem with when you put in all the forced issues. It's the accidents that then catch you out on top of. It's just ridiculous. Look, I mentioned about the textures. I do think that the PC texture set might be a little bit too heavy. You probably want to drop your textures to medium, even if all your other settings are high. It's probably the better balance, or having your textures one step below all the rest of your settings. You might find it's a better matchup. Obviously, running at your native res with no anti-aliasing will probably get you out of trouble, although the Forza engine, the off-screen render of the game world was very, very low res. It felt like it was one of the few games I played, or the first game I played in a long time, that needed the anti-aliasing really cranked in order to take out the jaggies. So you'll probably find that you need a mixture of finding a resolution and an upscaler of some sort, like your DLSS or your FSR2. But yeah, that you might need your anti-aliasing on just that's the way, if your developers intend the combination of the resolution and anti-aliasing is needed, that just might be needed. But yeah, if you're at the point of trying to tweak to get that higher frame rate, generally, the usual culprits, lower your shadows, because at the end of the day, they don't really affect immersion that badly. We can just kind of ignore the absolute shadow purity. If your draw distance is huge, I can imagine that's a bit of a burden on your CPU as well, potentially. But look, at this point, I don't want to just go into the realm of other tweak guides. The 3 tweaks I gave at the start of this were the big ones that I think may or may not make a difference, in particular being get your virtual memory to a locked size that's absolutely huge, even if you haven't used it in a very long time, even if, just like me, you agree shouldn't be needed. It might just be, it becomes a solution for you. So I suggest going down that path. If you need to set the affinity for the software so that it's running as a low, it's running in the background, essentially it's running as a low priority, that might just get you out of trouble. I've seen it on other Windows, Microsoft gaming titles, that's what is needed to get it to focus on the software and take out the jank, the little niggles. But also, yeah, look, as we saw, if you disable the core that you see heavily loaded, sometimes it forces it to distribute those tasks across several cores, and we see a lot better parallelity and better loading of the CPU, which might actually up your actual minimum frame rate. It might up some of your frame rates there. Anyway, if any of this has been of use to you, yay! Look, I was hoping to keep this one super short, so look, if we fit that goal, even better. Look, we have gone over 30 minutes. I thank you for your time given. All smiles with you, and may you enjoy your Starfield.